gonna go ahead and get rid of the porn in the background this time. Okay, so I've moved one, and there wasn't really anything that racy in it apart from a lady's bottom. So to continue with a theme, Lady Macbeth. So Lady M, for saying that she's kind of instrumental in Macbeth. She's actually the one who goads him on and makes sure that he does the deed of killing the sitting king, as it were. She kind of trails off. She just sort of goes mad, and that's it. I wanted to know the rest of her story because there had to be one. The original story of Macbeth is obviously based on a real person who was, believe it or not, a king of Scotland. But the actual story is slightly different from what good old Will has left us with. So I know I'm going to say this name wrong, so I apologise to all my watchers, especially anyone whose Celtic sensibilities and ancestry is horrifically invalidated by the way in which I say it, but Macbeth's wife was a lady called Gruach. Gruoch, because it definitely wasn't Grouch, but it looked like that. Now, Gruoch did not have humble beginnings, did she say? She was actually granddaughter of one of the kings of Scots, another name that I'm about to mispronounce. It's written as Sinead or Kinnaid, but it's actually going to be pronounced something like Con or Connor or something like that, for which I, again, heartily apologise to anybody with whom I share Scottish ancestry. Don't be too angry at me, we've been in England a while. So her father was a nobleman but did not become king. That instead went to a Scotsman by the name of Malcolm. I've just done a tiny weeny bit of extra research because I didn't like how I was saying that name and I was approximating it. Turns out it's probably that Kinnaid, as I was saying, is probably pronounced Kenneth. Kenneth, King of the Scots. Anyway, Gruach was a teenager when she was first married to a gentleman who, again, approximation, his name was Gil. Gil was the Mormaer of Moray, and it's basically like a lordship. So she and Gil have a son called Lulach. This again would have been when she was quite young, because she's thought to have been born in about 1015, and by 1032 Gil is killed really quite horrifically. The story goes roughly that Gil is invited somewhere to come and dine. I believe it's at the leisure of the king. And he goes there with 50 of his men. And as soon as he and his men are in the hall, the doors are shut upon him and they set fire to the place. So he and his men burn to death, basically. So not so long after her husband's tragic death, along comes Gil's cousin, who basically says, you know, I can look after you and the clans will like it, that kind of thing. And also, I'm about to become Mormaer of Moray anyway, so if you stick with me, well then, you'll be still in the lifestyle to which you are used, whatever he actually put to her. They got married, and this gentleman's name was, funnily enough, Macbeth. So Lulach must have only been quite small when his father died, so Macbeth essentially brings him up as if he were his own. From what I can find, I don't think Macbeth and Gruach had their own children together. The date of Gruach's death is actually not known. Of course, according to Will, she dies by suicide after she has gone mad, but there's not really any historical evidence to back this up. However, here is where the thick plot ends. One of the reasons they say that Malcolm, the reigning king of the Scots at the time, signed off on Gil's really quite gruesome death was because he was getting a bit too popular. And if Gil had turned around and tried to lead an army to depose him, one of those situations where it was more than likely that they would follow Gil instead of staying loyal to the king. So, of course, what do you do in such a situation? You lock him in a hall and you burn him to death. Oh, I don't think, no, this lipstick doesn't work. However, King Malcolm, who, funnily enough, is father to the king that they would have killed in Macbeth, was not the only one who had something to gain from Gruach's first husband kicking the bucket in mysterious circumstances. In fact, the person who would stand to gain the most was, guess who? His cousin Macbeth. He becomes Mayor of Moray, he gets Gruach, so it's a pretty sweet deal for Macbeth. And it is actually not 100% certain whether he was basically taking Gruach as his wife in terms of looking after her, or whether he was actually taking her as the widow of an enemy. But it could also be said, of course, that when Macbeth and Gruach, as in the play, kill Duncan, they're potentially having some kind of vengeance on the line of the kings of Scots at that time, because of course Duncan was Malcolm's son, and so an eye for an eye. You take our kinsman, we'll take this living son of yours. Revenge on his ghost? I'm not sure. We're all getting very Shakespeare now. Sadly, after her marriage and becoming Queen of Scotland and stuff, as happens to so many historical women, it basically becomes the fact that nobody knows what really happens to her. Hence, Shakespeare had a lot of leeway and could make up that she was hacked apart inside with her own guilt of what they had done to somebody who, I don't know, kings are never lily white, are they? They usually deserve it. So I know a lot of people have done it before, have tried it, have done different things, but basically, in After Shakespeare, all I'm doing is basically making Gruach even more kick-ass than history has recorded her as being. Because there are so many kick-ass women who have been forgotten about anyway, so you might as well throw a few extra in there. By the time that Macbeth dies, Lulach, Gruach's son, takes his place. He's his successor. And so it's not really known if Gruach was still alive then, or if she survived him, or just, I don't know, went to a monastery like they do in those times. But the fact that Shakespeare wrote of such a kick-ass woman, I really wanted to really grow upon that and modernize it a bit so that you have an even more cutthroat, you have an even more determined woman, but one who can feel at the same time. Because, of course, in the text, she's obviously a mother, and she has this nurturing side that she pushes down because she has to, because they've got a job to do. Hold on, I've just got to go get my cloak. There we go, that's the kind of green we need. Woohoo! Lovely. So this is my Lady Macbeth, or Gruach, wife of the Mayor of Moray and then Queen of the Scots. Yes! With a towel in the background, naturally. I am still undecided about whether I've got those eyes dark enough yet. Anyway, here I am. Oh god, I love it when my hair's this red. I feel so fracking Celtic. Like an idiot, I nearly forgot the most important part.